Welcome you, Dr. Gulfraz Ahmad.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dr. Qamar Javed Sharif, Chairman of the Board of Directors of OGDCL, Dr. Saeed Jadoon, President of the Petroleum Club of Pakistan, members and associated people with the Petroleum Club of Pakistan, friends and colleagues of the industry. I neither have the time nor the gumption to tell you how happy and excited I am to be with you, just to be one among you. Quite naturally, I didn't want Dr. Saeed Jadoon to go over some of my past affiliations and associations, because I didn't want to give an impression that most of me is behind me. I still want to have something ahead of me. I have lots of other emotions come to my mind when I come here in this auditorium. I don't have time, but if later on somebody asks the questions, then I could dilate. The theme that I'm going to share some thoughts on with you is dynamics of Pakistan's energy security. There are two principal features of this theme. One is the energy security itself, and second, the dynamics, the way that energy security is being impacted and changing with developments within the country as well as outside the country. So the dynamics are both the changes and the narrative of Pakistan's energy security. I just put a precursor there because I could easily dilate on this subject without actually repeating myself for 90 minutes. I have only half of that. Therefore, through this precursor, I just want to convey some apologies. That's a very complex interplay, energy security, of numerous factors that cut across economy, governance, international energy market, and foreign affairs. Particularly in the case of Pakistan, it's become much more complicated because of the superpower involvement and interest in keeping us away from the sources of energy, as the interstate pipeline for the last 25 years have not materialized. Energy security also does not really mean energy self-sufficiency. Of course, all of us sitting here in this hall are working towards the dream of making Pakistan self-sufficient in energy. Yes, that will help, but there's still more to be said. And I dilated. Japan and Morocco, one very advanced country economically, second a country at our level, both import 95% of energy they use. Both of them have far better energy security than we. Nigeria, for example, exports oil but has very weak energy security. So what disclaimer at the end, in the short time available, I try to develop a perspective, because I know that you as an audience is very special relating to E&P industry of Pakistan. You have a greater understanding and you are more versed in certain aspects of the topic than even myself. I also made a comment there that it is as a result of the cumulative effort by your predecessors and yourself at this point in time that Pakistan is a natural gas based economy. Everybody wishes to be a natural gas based economy instead of the oil based economy. There are only two countries where the percentile contribution of natural gas in the primary energy mix is higher than Pakistan, and they are Russia and Iran, both of them the first highest and second highest gas reserves in the world. We 26th gas reserves, but third in the contribution of natural gas to the energy economy. So it's a great position of distinction to Pakistan in that respect. I always love to share this very busy slide. I don't know I could dilate on it for 30 minutes on the slide itself, but I want you not to get too involved with the busy details. This slide is for about 160 years, and it starts 1850 when the coal as the first fossil fuel entered the human use in an industrial sense. And then you have various color codes, biomass that has been coming since antiquity in maroon color, then oil in the oil color, black gray, the coal, and then oil in the mustard color, natural gas, and then the other two. What I really want to tell you this thing, I put the arrow at 1950. What happened between 1850 to 1950 was progressive, slightly increasing growth in the use of energy. In 1950 suddenly took off, became exponential. 10 times the average annual growth of energy in the previous century. And what was the consequence? The OECD. It brought forth a classification in the world which are most prosperous countries, and they are also most influence bearing in the world, the OECD. So that spike in energy consumption created OECD, or for that matter prosperity. But that's not all. Here is a curve. Once again, look at 1950. This is a knowledge doubling curve. I try to trace it out by going to 180 and then start seeing how long did it take to double. I have only time to tell you at 1950 this also took off exponentially, giving indication that it's not only the economy, the prosperity which was caused by energy, it was also the growth in knowledge, and knowledge is the preponderant source of power. So energy that we may think is an esoteric field, it belongs to the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Resources, or in some way Ministry of Power, it's actually everything. Because the title slide showed you that energy security feeds into economic security, that feeds into national security, that once again comes back and strengthens the energy security. It goes loop in the loop. There may have been some time in the past, energy management may have been a niche management. Right now, today's day, energy management at the centrality of any government. So you couldn't really emphasize more, both from point of view of prosperity, economic growth, and the knowledge. Here, for example, I just want to throw a curve for nearly 200 years, which shows you some kind of correlating relationship between the economic growth and energy consumption growth. The parrot green curve, GDP, and the maroon curve. And since the period is very long, but if you try put it on a broader, you would see that energy growth curve and the GDP growth curve nearly behaved similarly. But one thing is very important, that the energy growth curve precedes the economic growth. If tomorrow you want to grow economically by 1 more %, then this year you grow in energy consumption by 1. And if you have not grown in energy consumption today, that means you will not be able to grow in the economic growth tomorrow. That is its preponderant sort of relationship. That was, of course, the global curve. And then I thought maybe you would like to see the back home. There's about 15 years data, real data Pakistan, and you see how closely the curves hug each other, leaving no doubt, at least in our own home setting, that it is very, very closely related, both the economic growth and energy growth. So, based upon that, I had half a dozen more slides in between. I dropped them and I came to the global map. This is the political map of the world, and I used my own hand, wiggly line, drew this blue line. And if you read it on the left side, this is the energy consumption per capita divide. Countries above that, and don't regard Saudi Arabia as an aberration, normally countries above that have higher energy consumption per capita, below that lower energy consumption. Then I went to another map, a political map which gave you GDP per capita. I don't have the time to show you the separate map, but when I did that and put the wiggly line, lo and behold, the same line in the global map that divides energy consumption per capita also divides in the GDP per capita, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind that those countries who have higher GDP than us per capita also have higher energy consumption per capita. So the importance, as I said, this is the centrality of governance in any country. It needs to be given that kind of. So if that be the case, if energy consumption per capita correlates with the wealth generation per capita, look at where Pakistan stands. I had to put the star there. Pakistan consumes 1/5 of the average of the world. It's very, very low in energy consumption. We are talking about not being able to provide energy at this level, which itself is very, very low. Our challenge is that we need to increase energy consumption per capita if you really want to overcome the endemic poverty, if you really want to count in the world. So these are the issues of energy security because it feeds into national security. This is in the case of power. Look at the world average, broken dotted green line, and the Pakistan bar that I added. So nowhere do we even come close to the global average. This is a little reassuring that for some time we didn't grow at all in annual primary energy growth, but for some time we're showing, I have an exaggerated vertical scale, but we're showing an increase. Now this is one of the heart of the matter slide here. What is energy security? How do the world energy specialists look at it? How do they grade which country has higher energy security and which country has lower energy security? That's the crux of the matter. And here they don't think which country produces more energy internally. No, that's a factor, but not the determining factor. So it really depends on two things, a function of two parameters: energy intensity, which is the inverse of energy efficiency, that is on the lower x-axis. But the most critical parameter that determines energy security is the energy import as a percentage of your total exports. That is the heart of the matter. You talk about energy security, in the same breath you talk about what is your export in relation. Now, here in this particular matrix, which is a very crucial matrix, this is how you actually compare. This is divided into 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1 is the effective energy security and thriving economies. This is the best quadrant you would like to station yourself in. The worst is the 4th quadrant here, which neither you have energy efficiency because you spend much more energy in transforming it to wealth, let us say single dollar. And at the same time, you have energy import as a percentage of total export is more than 15%. That is exposed economies, and we sit in the 4th quadrant, which is energy insecurity quadrant. And we just move up and down. And I related to you how do we move up, because I try to put Pakistan's position to the 2002, 2015, 34%, 15% is the cardinal level. Above that is insecurity. In 2016 went down to 17% and then up again to 30%. This is the first time in recent history that Pakistan came down very close to 15% level, which is energy security threshold. And how did that happen? You need to know that. Pakistan's energy security hangs by the thin thread of the oil price. You're very aware of the recent price crash in 2015. That price crashed and we imported 12.6% more oil in 2016 than 2014, and we spent only 7.6 billion instead of 14. That was a help to Pakistan's economy from blue. That help should have been actually directed to some one-time economic prop to Pakistan. We don't even know where did it go because our foreign loans continue to increase. So this is the time when you came close, 17.7% in 2016, closer to the threshold of 15%, not by any other factor, only by the divine effect on oil price. So today, if you ask me how do we rate in energy security, it is as volatile, as exposed as the oil price. Even though our import dependence is about 43%, but we don't have exports. Japan imports 95% of a very large amount of energy, but still is not more than 15% of their total export. So in one word, how do you reinforce your energy security, increase your exports? Don't worry about the imports, because we already are among the lowest in the country's energy consumption per capita. You need to increase energy consumption per capita. It will increase your imports of energy. That is inconsequential as long as you can increase exports and remain within 15% threshold. Those are the throes of the energy security debate. One of the 2 parameters on that energy security matrix was energy intensity, or the inverse of energy efficiency. So you can see Pakistan among the highest in energy intensity. That is, we spend much more energy to get $1 out of it compared with many other countries. So our affliction is not only in terms of exports, the affliction also touches our inefficiency in the use of energy, double jeopardy as they would call it. Now I would just go to quickly run through the energy mix. This is the global energy mix that sets the scene. All these sources are called commercial energy sources because they are traded in the world. A source is called commercial if it is traded globally. So all these sources are commercial. We also use the same sources. We also import where we need the same sources. But the business that you are in, I don't want to go even to more details because it's much more, but 45 million barrels of oil is traded every day as a minimum. It may have gone to 46. Similarly, this much of 21 million barrels of oil equivalent gas, 27 coal, total 76. This energy trade constitutes the largest commodity trade in the world. So you also know that being energy professionals, you matter in the world in a very, very substantive manner. You can see the natural gas contribution in the global energy mix, 23%, in most cases in Pakistan, at least twice of that. That is what creates Pakistan's energy economy as a gas-based economy, and everybody looks at it with a degree of, wish that they could do the same. This is just a throw forward. Beyond 2020, there is a likelihood of natural gas in overall contribution to global energy mix to overtake oil, and this would be particularly made possible by Paris Agreement. I can't go into the details. Now, this is a model. When this Paris Agreement came about, then I started working on it. I have very little knowledge and qualifications to work out this model that I did. And what came out was that I have three cases here. There's the blue bar here relates to 2010 statistics. Maroon bar is as usual. If we did nothing and did business as usual, then this is what would be the case in 2030. This projection is for 2030. And the third, the green bar, is if Paris Agreement was to be achieved by 2030, then this would be the sort of the primary energy mix. And you need to know that in 2010, oil contributed 36% to global business as usual because there is a swing towards natural gas, and renewables, business as usual, oil will come down to 27%. But if we were truly to pursue Paris Agreement with its ambitious target of 1.5%, but not more than 1.5 degrees centigrade and not more than 2 degrees centigrade rise in the pre-industrial era temperature by year 2100, then oil should come down to 15%, coal to 15%, natural gas will rise up to 30% because this is a bridge. Natural gas is a fossil fuel, but it's a bridge between the oil-based energy economy of the world towards the renewable hydro. And renewable, you can see, if we were to achieve Paris targets, by 2030 renewables would go to 28%. When I made this complex model and I drew the chart, I didn't believe that. I thought people would laugh at me. But now global models have started coming about. I was among the first one to develop this model, is indicated here in 2017. Now they are even going up to 36% renewable. So you would know that since the world is very serious, look at the way the weather has become so unbearably hostile, the floods and other things, we will have to achieve Paris Agreement and renewables will increase. I just picked up this slide only for one reason, that in the world when the gas contribution to the global energy mix is increasing, one of the area where it's increasing here is the use of natural gas in automotive sector, of which Pakistan had been undisputed global leader in 2010. It's not that you always lag behind, you have led the world in the use of natural gas in the automotive sector. In 2010, you were top of the world in total gas being used in automotive sector, in the percentile of total vehicles being used in CNG, and the total number of vehicles. That is, China is catching up with you. United States is catching up with you. I can't dilate on it how America invited me to Pentagon to help Afghanistan achieve the use of natural gas in automotive vehicles. I wasn't able to take the trip. Then they asked me to accompany them to Afghanistan. It was too hot at that time. I couldn't go. But the reason is, I also want to tell you how your leadership is being acknowledged. In 2017, I received an invitation from New Fuels. There's a cell in Israeli Prime Minister's office, the induction of new fuels, and they invited me by name, saying that if I can come and dilate on how Pakistan became the world leader in use of natural gas. And they said there's a $500,000 first prize of best presentation. Of what we heard of you, you'll probably go back $500,000 rich, and you'll get a chance to meet the Prime Minister of Israel. Obviously, I didn't go, but you matter in the world where you have given the lead, and that's why I emphasize natural gas-based economy. So there is another thing which is appearing on the horizon of global energy security. For a while, I'm expanding the canvas. The dynamics of global energy security are fast changing. Obviously, with those changes, our national energy security will be impacted. And just quickly, not to go into details, increasing reserves of conventional oil and gas. Oil shale, gas, which has made America the net exporter, it may catch up with other prospective countries like Argentina, like China, like Canada, like Australia, and maybe one day Pakistan. Increasing renewables, wind, solar, and biofuels, electrofuels, hydrogen, which are developing very fast, reducing energy intensity. The efficiency in use of energy or conversion of energy into wealth generation is increasing very fast. And I also tell you, whenever there is a high oil price regime, that is a time when energy efficiency globally increases, because it is more cost effective to put money into alternatives and improving the efficiency. Coal has researched for one reason that the newest coal technology, which is called hyper supercritical, where the combustion takes place at such a hypercritical level that most of the pollutants, they get destroyed. And the emissions of CO2 are reduced to the minimum, and they're reduced to the minimum to a point where you can just capture and store them. You can't capture and store the emissions, CO2 emissions from supercritical because they are enormous, and from subcritical, which are absolutely horrendously enormous. So coal is making a case that, look, instead of leaving coal out of options, you can go now higher and coal utilization technology. That again, since there is immense amount of coal still available in the world, global energy security dynamics are changing. People aren't really worried to meet the bills. There is I'll dilate on this thing, knowledge economy, advent of knowledge economy. I show you some example which perhaps gives us a way out of the morass of energy security that we are in. Knowledge economy is not energy intensive. It's not capital intensive. It's not infrastructure intensive. Yet the gains are much bigger and much faster. So now if the people if the developed countries of the world, they want to generate more wealth, they would first go to knowledge economy where they get much quicker results with less resources. US self-sufficiency, the US global influence controlled energy access. Why is US sitting in Middle East? Because Middle East, the energy storehouse of the world. 60% oil, 60% gas, and they're there. But now their sensitivity is reducing. And instead of competing for access to energy sources, they're beginning to compete for energy markets. The way they are exporting LNG, and now they are exporting oil. They are trying to convince China to get more LNG and oil from them. So that is also easing the tension. Global energy security tension is easing to some kind of more, cooperative stance than the previous. China's Eurasian, this also in a regional sense will reduce the freight and maybe add to energy security. But when we do that, there's one caution that I wrote in the red below, that digitalization is used both ways, digitalization of the power plants, grids and other energy infrastructure is now very vulnerable to cyber attacks. So the energy security, whereas it's easing globally, this aspect is become now a very potent threat. One can really get the national grid go off power at any time if somebody wants to target it. Capacity exists if somebody wants, and it depends how much of defense mechanism you have created. Now, very quickly, a slide which is closer home to your hearts and minds. Pakistan's resourcefulness in oil and gas. How much did we discover? How much did we produce? How much is the remaining thing? You can see there, quite naturally, we have the challenge. The remaining is much less than what we originally, what we have produced. But you all know this thing. This is as of 1st of July 2006, 1,021 exploration wells drilled up to that time. Not too much. But I just want to tell you, all oil exporting countries, all of them, one to all, had achieved exportable reserves well before they completed 1,021 wells. That's very sobering statistics. So although you would talk about the density is very low, we still have large areas where we haven't drilled enough wells. That is fine. We need to do that. We may achieve this success. But the sobering part was that when you looked at what looked bigger to the eye, over 1,000 wells, and we are still in the investment seeking mode as far as explorations. The countries, first they seek the investment, they get enough discoveries, then after that they go to the rent seeking mode, start getting much more from the sale of the oil and gas, but we are still in the investment seeking mode. We have to continually offer better financial terms. I also don't want to relate, this is the effect of knowledge, the effect of technology, that and it applies more to the oil fields. We don't have, unfortunately, we don't have that many oil fields, but the technology that your economically recoverable reserves are moving towards technically recoverable, and that is envelope is extending towards in place. And most of the, when I told you that the global reserves of conventional oil are increasing, they are increasing mainly from this. So every time you reevaluate, you apply new technology, you improve. If you improve recovery factor globally by 1%, you get 63 billion barrels of additional oil. So, this is again a knowledge related global energy security, and here of course I come to a field which is closer home, and I don't know whether Dr. Nadeem is sitting here, but I did use this model, this is published model only because it at least gives us some indicative hope of total yet to discover. Oil is about 1 billion barrels and the natural gas about 11 trillion cubic feet. That is, and this is only from those areas which are currently under exploration. It does not cover the frontier areas because there is no information available there. To me, this model is fairly useful and at least gives an indicative sort of hope that you people are in business. There is still substantial more oil to be discovered, natural gas to be discovered, even from the areas which are under exploration. The moment we start expanding into frontier areas, hopefully our luck would change. This is a slide which for some reason is very close to my heart. For some strange reason, it's also a little bit of heart-shaped picture, but that is no coincidence. If you look at it, this shaded area is very rich shale bed. It is dipping from northeast to southwest, dipping. It's a pretty steep dip. Before the advent of knowledge and technology of shale, the industry discovered these oil fields and they thought that's it. They couldn't discover more oil fields than some that as knowledge, as technology improved, then they realized that there is a shale oil here sitting there, a lot of shale oil. And they further saw that below the shale oil is wet gas, which is oil and right. And then went deeper than that, it is a dry gas. And when you go deeper, it is ore mature. This is the actual real case in United States of America. So, whereas this was our net resourcefulness some times back, the resourcefulness has changed enormously as you apply knowledge, apply technology, and that's why these plays are called knowledge plays. We still have to, we are still on the surface here. We are still looking for this trivial, migration of oil here. But what lies below, you have got a very large extent of rich shales. So those things we will find, the world is finding it. That's why the concern on global energy security in the world is easing. Back home again, looking at our gas-based energy economy. Gas is the predominant source of energy, and gas demand is constrained demand, as they would say, is the demand from those people who are connected at the moment. It doesn't include the people yet to be connected. And you see how big that demand would be. And this is your indigenous supply. You have now started, you can't grow in indigenous gas. And with this kind of shortfall, and you being the natural gas-based economy, and your exports being abysmally small, you can't import that much of oil, plus use of that oil in power generation is antithetical, it's uneconomical, so you were in a bind. If not import oil, you wouldn't have power. Import oil is going to make your power sector insolvent. That was the bind we are in. So hopefully the next slide, we started bringing LNG, and I want to assure you at this point in time that if you get your spreadsheet and sit down and you say the oil that we are importing for generation power, if imported LNG, whatever be the price comparison, because both prices are interlinked, it's far cheaper to generate power using LNG because the thermal efficiency, the modern turbines is twice as much as that of oil. So this is one of the areas which is inexcusable in Pakistan's governance. Someone someday will have to explain why year after year, decade after decade, we insisted on importing oil and generating the most expensive power, depressing the economy, and never thought of importing LNG. That's a moot question. This your crude oil production doesn't really mean much, but this is a fairly meaningful slide because we have been importing oil and generating power. 2013, 38% of your total power was generated using oil, and 6.9% out of that was using diesel. Diesel generated power was 25 rupees, oil was 12 to 13 rupees. Natural gas was 5 rupees something. LNG at that time would fall less than 6 rupees. So those were the very compelling things that should have forced us. So I'm happy to tell you in June 2017 that 6.9% of HG totally replaced by our LNG, and look at the price figures of tariff at that point. Makes you wonder, why would one spend 12.7, at this point the price of oil had come low, LNG was low, it was still nearly 13 rupees a unit in HST, and our LNG was 5.34. But we still insisted, as if we were bent upon sinking the economy of this country. This is the projected power generation. The oil is projected to go down from 30s to 20%, and the nuclear will increase to 9%, and gas and LNG. So at least you will get some economic reprieve from another year or two if we are able to stay course and achieve this power generation mix. Just a few optimal choice of imported energy. How do you make the choice? Is end use economics. When you just go around and want to buy a gadget in the market, you will say, how am I going to use it? Is it better for my use this product or that product? So you always do the end use economics. If the oil is going to be used in power generation, do the end use economics, and you discard oil because it's not suitable. And also some respect for Paris Agreement, the emissions. We still have 30,000 megawatt of available hydel potential on Indus Delta only, leaving the Jhelum River maybe another 5,000–6,000. And you need to exploit that because, for one, you have spin-off benefits of the water storage and some handle on control of devastating floods. The nuclear power, as you know, that our national plan is to achieve 8,500 megawatt of nuclear capacity by 2030. We are slipping right now. We need to stay on course and achieve that. And you would be very happy to know that there are 3 1,100 megawatt power plants under construction, one in Karachi, which is very close to completion, may start generating end of 2020 or 21, and 2 1,100 megawatt at Chashma. But we are slipping. The remaining about 10–12 years, we'll have to go a little faster in order to achieve our national target. That will give you fair amount of energy security because it's a base electricity. It is the cheapest electricity. WAPDA doesn't give more than 3.5 rupees to Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission per unit. and it's a base load. You don't have to worry about the load part of it. And it's very reliable because you can't afford to be lax in your operation of the nuclear power plants. Third coal, we're very happy to know at least that some electricity flowing out of third, although a lot more has to. This is the power capacity, and you see how we have now, by the grace of God, after having stayed at the same level for last 20-25 years, we have increased the power generation a bit, which is very crucial too. Here is a model. Once again, I didn't really think that I'm too knowledgeable to project this model, but I did in the absence of what I could not see. And that is the, in 2015, I haven't revisited that model because it continues to compare with the reality. This is the 3 economic development scenarios, the lowest economic growth that we should at least consider in our planning, 5%, sort of, middle scenario 6.5%, but where we need to grow today, Pakistan, is 8%. With the number of young people in the market, with the number of unemployed people in the market, our burden would continue to increase until we are able to achieve minimum 8% growth and create jobs and poverty reduction. So that is your imperative. What we have been able to achieve in 2017, 80, 2015, 70 is on 5% growth. This is not at all adequate to your national needs. Now, by this model, if by 2020 you were to go to 6.5% growth, you will go to about 107, which is otherwise not going to be the case, because in today you're at 80, you'll probably go to 80, 85. And if you were to raise your eyes that we must to 8% growth, 131. This is, these are the parameters of energy security. You are not talking about energy security at 5% growth. If you were looking at 5% growth, you have already accepted failure. You have accepted endemic poverty. That's not how this nation should at least set its eyes at. So if you were to set the eyes at 8%, you know how much increase. And these are the dynamics of energy security. It's not just the self-sufficiency, many other factors impinge upon it. I just alluded to knowledge economy. I very quickly go over it. Look at these technology giants. Some of them, one of them is $1 trillion worth. The other one soon to be $1 trillion. No other energy house in the whole world is even $500 billion, even though it may have been working for the last 150 years. All these companies I'm talking about, you can start looking at the ages 15, 20, 25. In 25 years' time, you become $1 trillion worth. And what was the input? Not that much of finances. They started at the back of their houses. Not that much of energy, not too many buildings, not physical infrastructure, just the brain power, which all of us have. And I just want to mention, passing, as far as the quality of brain power is concerned, this country can take pride. But there is a fundamental transition. One is the quantum of intellect, you normally call IQ. One is formal intelligence. We have high IQ, but low formal intelligence. Because from IQ to formal intelligence, you go through education, and which we didn't have. So a country where the human resource should be our biggest asset, because that potential, why is that potential there? Because you have now incontrovertible evidence of having been there for the last 2 million years. The history of the world of Europe is only 500,000. America is extract of Europe. And how does the quantum of intellect develop? Every time our ancestors interacted with something, the reaction made an imprint on our brain, what you call the DNA. We have so many more imprints in our brain, the rich DNA, that's why we have potential to increase. So I hope one day the world gets the benefit of this nation achieving its formal intelligence in relation to its potential and making the life easier for others the way they have made for us. Very little investment of money, no physical infrastructure, yet you can get. I may just mention in passing, maybe I'll say it again, our biggest problem today are exports. In 3 years' time, without doubt, you can achieve at least $10 billion exports in IT sector. Industrial exports for last 15 years have more or less stayed static. So if exports were to increase your energy security, this is the fastest way. India last about 2 years back used to get $150 billion of IT related export. Imagine. And we have brains. We have also knowledgeable brains too. They are not too less in number. This is, I just try to hope that this 4.5 servers which entering Pakistan, it will give us a little bit of better infrastructure for creating knowledge economy. But there is something, I am not a philosopher, but I have been thinking all the time that the present style of economy, the industrial economy, those nations, the OECD, which are ahead of us, no matter what you do, we cannot close gap with them because they are growing faster in industrial economy than we can. So I said, this is perhaps, question was to the Almighty's bounty, that why are we permanently set back with no hope of ever catching up or even closing the gap? To me, I found the answer. You can leapfrog. Forget about the industrial economy. Pakistan can never reach the world. But if you leapfrog, leave where you are and go to knowledge economy, you can catch up where you want to be. This is a natural bounty, God-given opportunity for those who have not to get something in their turn. So that is something, there used to be only one correlation of GDP growth, and that used to be energy consumption that I shared with you. But this is now a new correlation, although it's still a weak correlation, 0.8 correlation index, but it is the internet use linked to national income. Higher internet use, higher national income. Here I feel a little bit happier that Pakistan started off in 2013 from this point and has climbed up in 2019 here, getting closer to India. But if you look at the countries that they have followed the leapfrog, leave your diversity behind and jump. Look at the countries in Africa, Senegal, Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt, Jordan, Bolivia, China, Brazil, Venezuela, Lebanon, Russia, Argentina. They are much above us in internet use density. So this is a hope. If there is some despondency that I created, this is the hope that I want to generate with you, that you have a way to catch up and even move ahead. This is a very illustrative slide, again very busy. I don't want you to get immersed in other detail. I just want you to look at this GDP graph and the primary energy graph. In that, it is OECD in the solid maroon block and non-OECD in the palish blocks. Also forget about everything because I don't have time. Look only at the red wiggly curve. If the curve is trembling, my hands. This is the growth in the economy of OECD countries projected 2030, very healthy growth. Look at again the red wiggly curve. This is the growth in the use of primary energy. You can see that the wealth is continuing to grow, but energy is almost leveled off, if not declined. Meaning thereby that now you don't depend that much on energy to generate wealth because of this knowledge economy and leapfrog, forget where you were, just jump across where you want to be. A great opportunity and a question to my mind that yes, God has given bounty. A very quick flashing showing how the wind and solar power in the world is increasing. It is nearly becoming exponential. And this is a throw forward, a very, very passionate subject of mine when we rid ourselves of the fossil fuels and the physical sources of energy and look towards the human brain, that energy comes out of human brain. And this is the cold solar fusion, which all the time up to this 2014, when you do these fusion experiments, you did generate energy, but the input of energy to heat up the plasma to millions of centigrade temperature was more than what you got out of it. So it was not an energy source, it was energy sink. And it is thrown forward in at least hopeful terms that by 2035, the first the solar fusion reactor would be available that would generate very profitable amount of energy. What is the fuel it will use? Hydrogen, which is the largest, by far the largest element in the universe, not only on Earth, but the whole universe, hydrogen. And what will this solar fusion do? Convert hydrogen into water vapors, pure water vapors, no pollution whatsoever, and as much as you want. So my feeling is by 2050, solar fusion would rid you of the import of fossil fuels, and the human brain would have delivered another impossible. There is a revolutionary potential, as I said, that skip last ground and jumps start the knowledge economy by investing in service sector. Today, if I have to do something with the national planning, let's say we have 1,000 billions of rupees in the public sector development fund. 500 is today earmarked for physical infrastructure. Though the physical infrastructure in this country is badly needed because we didn't do our job right in the past, but I say put 400 billion to the knowledge economy, because within 4 or 5 years you will generate so much of revenue from where you go back and catch up with the physical infrastructure. Times have changed, priority must change, brains are at play, not just bodies. And look at the world is connecting the brains, because every brain matters, every brain, even if it's uneducated, matters. Very large communities that don't have power, they don't have internet, they don't even have mobile phones, they don't even can charge their phones. So you need to connect them. There ought to be many grids to connect the communities without power, and then have local, the power centers being used, supplied by solar power, wind power, biomass, whatever have you. And another area which is of revolutionary potential, I just only talking about revolutionary potential where you get if the net effect is much more than the input, and that is if there is a regulatory efficiency restriction on the energy efficiency of our highly inefficient household appliances, industrial appliances, it can truly give you a reprieve in very short time. And then, of course, you know, they must label. I mean, when you go around and buy an energy appliance, whether it be a gas heater or gas geyser or anything, it does not give you how much energy it uses because it is energy indifferent waste. That is again a revolutionary potential. But whereas I've been talking about energy challenges, I want to also conclude by maybe there is one more slide on energy strengths. First is the gas-based energy economy. The whole world looks at with envy. The countrywide electric grid. You know, look at India. India grid is state grid, and the transmission of power from one state to the state is very, very limited. But you have a countrywide grid. You flow power from Balochistan and use it in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. That is a luxury, but that grid needs modernization. It's been there for the last 60 some years. And then so far, your bounty and your strength was very low emissions because you didn't use coal and your oil-based generation, if you go 10 years, was very low, and most of it is water. Even though you import 43% of the energy, but it's not as bad as that of Japan, for example. So don't worry about, you people continue to work to increase the indigenous supply of energy. You have challenges, you have limitations. But what they should do is just increase the exports and be very energy strong or energy security strong. Untapped potential waterhead, I dilated 30,000 megawatt. Lignite deposit, I dilated. We got to make more use of it. Prospective geology with proven hydrocarbon potential, which is closer to the heart and mind of your people. As I said before also that I have a great appreciation for the E&P industry in the country, that despite some very serious challenges, they got the frame moving, and we do hope that with yet to find and also the new blocks, I read yesterday that government is offering 40 more blocks. That was a music to the ear that will increase your chances of discovering more. I also read today in the newspaper that because the energy supply for year 1920 is not that constrained, it is likely to push our economic growth by 2%. So where is economic growth coming from? Only from the energy supply, energy efficiency. You people sit at the heart of the matter. These are some summarizing measures. I'm not going to go over the list, but I put elemental measures to at least summarizing the yes. If you really want to go over them, these are things. And then I've long been waiting to see this particular slide. I put a moral on this slide, and the moral is the poor of today would not be poor of the wealth which is limited and is concentrated, but the poor of the knowledge which fortuitously is unlimited and it's accessible. That is a promise to humanity. When I stand here, I'll throw challenges because we need to do something about them. But overall, there's a great promise. Thank you. If your president allows you to ask some questions, I would be just too happy to answer.
What are we aim for? Do we have to increase the productions and the explorations?
You know, it's a very good question. If you followed it in a peripheral manner, there was a broader message. One message is loud and clear that energy consumption per capita has to increase. But you don't only increase by importing oil. You have to then activate all others. For example, if you increase your exports, if in 2-3 years' time you had IT-related exports bring you $10 billion, you can afford to import cleaner energy. So one part of the equation, you got it right, that we need to import, use more energy. Obviously, we don't have as much. But then you also saw that we do have hydel. We can go steeper on nuclear, now that we have the technology of more than 1,000 megawatt nuclear reactors available. You can go to third coal. And when I say go to third coal, don't stay at the supercritical level. We, for the first time, added 4, 5, half a dozen coal power-based plants. They're all supercritical. There's no doubt that the hyper supercritical with carbon capture is about 20% more expensive. But if I were something to do with this decision, I would put out an ad in the United Nations that our economy does not go, let us do more than supercritical. We would be happy to go to hyper supercritical with the carbon capture if somebody covers that margin, which is the carbon credit. You could at least try for that. So what I said, there are unlimited possibilities. Human mind can turn out, but your concern is very right. On one hand, I'm saying that increase your per capita energy consumption. On the other hand, I said reduce your import, but I didn't per se say physically. I say have those imports which give you end use economical benefit and climatic benefit. Thank you. Good question. Ji.
Thank you, Doctor. Very good presentation. We really enjoyed it. You have been talking about the renewable energy and fossil fuel as well. So my question is that when you think how many years more will take when the renewable energy will supersede the fossil fuel and the fossil fuel will become a second grade fuel as now oil?
Okay. Again, a question of looking ahead, but I gave you the global fuels model by 2030 if you were to achieve Paris Agreement, and you saw the proportion. Only natural gas was 30%, then next high was renewables 28%, oil was probably 12 to 15%, coal was the same. So what you are looking ahead, only by the fact that the American president has walked away from the Paris Agreement will still stand. Even corporate America is committed to it. So people are working. They have to have an international audit every 5 years. First you give your plans every 5 years, end of 5 years international audit, whether you achieve your target or not. If not, you have to double your effort. So as you are seeing the intensity in weather, you know, the shocking heat wave in France last week, 10 days, temperature shot up 47 degrees, whereas we, traditionally hot countries, were burning in 40s. These things that started happening, they leave no doubt. In fact, my article is being published in Hilal. They requested on the climate change. That article is under publication in July. That gives a little bit more sort of, you know, my mental thinking on climate change. But then there's a sequel which is going to come where I'm going to go totally innovative and give the best news to humanity. But that article is presently in development. And if I was to give you a vent of it, I very provocatively use the phrase from endemic scarcity of things you need to sovereignty of abundance of things you need. So the humanity is working towards that. That article is coming. So the fossil fuels are definitely under stress, not only for economy, not only for access, not only for global availability, but for their emission footprints. Hopefully, it will pick up. Today, renewable, the wind energies become price competitive with thermal sources of power. In 2020, it will become slightly more attractive. So when wind and solar become more attractive than thermal, why would one go for thermal? So it is only an economic equation. Before the Chinese started flooding the global market with the solar cells, solar energy was very expensive. Efficiency is 11%. And once they crashed the European American solar cell market, but it came cheaper. Now today, the wind turbines which are being exported by China much higher than the rest of the world put together. Lower price, more efficiency. I was there in China. They gave us a 20-day seminar. They took us around to the places where they are concentrating for power generation using renewables, and we went to the southern boundary of the Inner Mongolia, and we saw all those things. They are moving very fast. They are pace setters in this, and today they are head of the world in renewable energy, and their footprints are cheaper renewable than thermal. So hopefully these things will happen. I may also dilate that today's solar cell is silicate based cell, and tomorrow's cell is going to be it is a cell which interfaces biologically and chemically, and the price of that cell will be 1/6 of the silicate based cell and efficiency more. It is likely to hit the market in a couple of years' time. I may also indicate here that this hydrogen cell, which at this point in time, hydrogen, which is in a fuel in abundance, you can get it from water, but the cost of extraction and the technology and the safety and handling make it less suitable, although various countries had converted to hydrogen economy. You go to California, you have the hydrogen dispensing stations, but now the main reason for the cost was platinum catalyst, and you know how expensive platinum. If your wife ever made a demand on you that she wants a platinum ring, you will have to work 30 years. That's how. So today they have developed a iron based catalyst to produce hydrogen 30 times more efficiency. Is likely to hit the market. So the human mind is working very fast, and I'm sure that before even 2030 we have developed better alternatives than the remaining use of fossil fuels. It wouldn't throw you out of the your job market, because 2030 is still some distance ahead. With already gray hairs, you would have superannuated. Okay, any last questions? Yes, please.
As we know, China is recently investing $60 billion in artificial intelligence system. China is going to invest $60 billion in artificial intelligence system.
Automation.
Artificial
intelligence.
Yes, sir. And regarding to so I'm going to complete my question.
You put your finger on a subject which, to say the least, is explosive in promise and impact on humanity, both negative and positive. You imagine what is the principal attribute of the most superior being on earth, human being, that you can learn. How do you start the process of learning? A baby starts process of learning. Even the first imprint on its brain has to be learned in the process of living. Why human youngs, they become adult at 18? Because the learning process is too long. And imagine if a machine self-learns and learns much faster, what is the limit? So that is an area which is fascination on one hand and red flags on other. China has already produced human engineered baby. So if I'm able to develop the DNA through cut and paste with the sharpest speed of synaptic connections of the neurons in my brain, I'll outwit anybody. If I have the absolutely disease-free DNA, because all those diseases genetically are familial in the family, have been cut out, if I pick up all those positive attributes and create a human being, what would happen to natural human beings? So that is, I say, scare on one hand, promise on the other. But China, in the nation that has the highest budget for research and development in the world is South Korea. China is pretty high. So you will see that when they say that when Iqbal said, look at the sun rising from the east, he was alluding to Japan. Japan also has the flag which is sun, red sun, but now more suns are rising in the east, and I hope a little sun sitting here in this country is waiting to rise too. Okay? Thank you.